and welcome to the Excellent Podcast. I am your cinematic host, Stefan Whitaker, the head honcho of SW Films. And today I have a very, very special guest on. This is kind of, like I said, monumentous for me because I've been following your page for so long now on Instagram. And you encompass two things that I am very passionate about: filmmaking and Ford F-150 Raptors. And also just with the I guess the content that you've created over the years, and just like the base that you seem to have created, over 87,000 followers on Instagram. I'm very, very happy to have Sterling Wild West here on the Excellent Podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
Good, thanks, Stefan. Thank you for having me on. This is new. This is awesome.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you just being able to take up the opportunity. This is really cool because, I'm as I am a filmmaker, I'm a businessman too. So I think about just the different opportunities I'm able to have, whether if I'm introducing, being able to introduce someone, like I said, with your stature and with your, followers onto the page, but also to someone who just has, say, the same interests, and stuff like that. I think that's really cool. I think this is a really awesome moment. So thank you once again for just being able to join the podcast and whatnot. And I know this is a first for you, so I would love for you to, go ahead and introduce yourself, speak to your excellence. Let the audience who may not know who you are, let them know what it is that you do.
Gosh, I'm an old man, 56 years old, born and raised in Utah. Always been in the automotive industry. I currently own two automotive repair shops, about 12 to 15 employees each. That's all I know is automotive.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. Blue collar. Of course, I own and operate a couple of the businesses, and I can't wait to get into your questions about the film because I think it might surprise you what my answers will be.
Yeah, man. So I mean, it's crazy. I can't remember the exact time it was that I started following your Instagram, but I want to say maybe a few years ago. Me personally, I have been a fan of Ford Raptors for such a very long time. Since the very first one, the SVT, the Gen 1, I was a huge fan of that. Of course, I'm only 27. So when that came out, I can't even remember how old I was. I was definitely like in maybe high school or something like that. And I was just a fan of it. And I was like, oh, I really want to drive this truck.
15, 16.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was a huge fan of the truck. I didn't know how much it cost. I would try to ask my mom and dad, like, hey, is this a possibility to get? And of course, they would say no. But I've always been a fan of Raptors. And I think as I started kind of going into the moment of, like, I guess, following some more stuff online when it comes to Raptor content, and just kind of realizing how big the community is in different spots. I kind of just recently found out about the NorCal Raptor runs out here where I live at, which is maybe a little bit more further north, but they still kind of operate some here in the Bay. Colorado Raptor runs. And then I think I came across your page as well. And I think what I really loved about your page the most is the fact that, like, it really seemed to incorporate like a cinematic approach, and like every single video I see of your Gen 3 Raptor is like always super cinematic. There's always some really amazing drone shots. There's always just a lot of, like, it just interested me more because, like, it was more of what I was kind of, I guess, it just, like I said, encompassed those two things that I'm super interested in.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. And before we break off into getting into just, everything that you have with the Raptors and getting into the, the filmmaking aspect, you said you own two automotive shops. So, I mean, where did you get your start in, I guess, the automotive shops and just automotive industry kind of in general? Where did that all come from for you?
So back in the late 70s, early 80s, I was 14 or so, 12 to 14. And I got started at my brother-in-law's tire store. He had a tire store in Roy, and I started as a clown for his April Fool's Day sale, and that was a 2-week long thing. And so every day I'd show up and dress up like a clown that I am, and handed out balloons and ate all their hot dogs and
yeah. Oh, an actual clown.
Oh, really? Yeah, I was dressed up like a clown. So through that, at night I'd hang out with the tire guys, and And then after a few days, they let me, dismount, mount a few tires, take a couple off, run the air gun and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And it just kind of got in my blood. And after the clown gig was over, I actually hired on as a tire and service guy, a lube, kind of a lube tech, just kind of a
Yeah.
helper at first,
Hmm.
making a big fat $2 an hour.
Wow. Wow. You said this was in the 70s?
This was in well, I was the clown in 79 or 80, and then I
Hmm.
started working there, part-time 81, 82.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's where I got the start. And I've been in the
Hmm.
automotive business in one way or another ever since then.
Yeah. Wow. That's $2 an hour. I could not imagine. So I mean, from there then, kind of working at those shops, like when did it become that you I guess wanted to like own and operate your own shops, and how did you get that opportunity to own and operate your own?
Well, since it was my brother-in-law that owned the shop, I mean, he's owned it now. He's still in business, and he's owned that shop for almost 54 years, and
Hmm.
he's 75, and he's still working this place.
Yeah.
Anyway, after I worked for him until I was 23 years old and newly married, and I
Hmm.
was a mechanic for him, and I always kind of had that desire to have my own business and do my own thing, be my own boss, write my own hours.
Yeah.
So I went to Weber State University and got some training in automotive to get a degree, and
Hmm.
uh, went through a couple of years of specialized training with General Motors. And I worked at a Buick dealership in Ogden, Utah,
Hmm.
which is now since closed. I worked there as an apprentice and a technician for several years.
Yeah.
And I was kind of recruited by a family friend that was the service manager at a Chevrolet dealership. So
Mm.
that took me up till 1987 when I decided to leave that industry, and I wanted to be my own boss, and I didn't quite know how to do it in owning my own shop. So I went off and started doing paintless dent repair
Mm.
because
Okay.
you didn't
Yep.
have to have much of an investment to do that. So I learned paintless dent repair from a company out in California. It was Dent
Mm.
Pro.
Okay. Yeah.
Trained for them, and then I did that. I worked for the owner of the company here in Utah for 5 years, and we actually had property in South Carolina where my wife's sister's it lives,
Hmm.
and we were going to move there once I got up to speed with the dent repair and start my own franchise in South Carolina. Well, it came right down to it. My wife said, I can't leave. The rest of my family's here.
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
got our kids. This is all they know. And so we canceled that. And I still had that desire to own my own business. I remember we were at the grocery store one night and check at the checkout stand, and they have magazines there. Well, there was a magazine that said Franchise Opportunities Handbook.
Mm.
And so I just grabbed it, went home and was thumbing through it before I went to bed that night. And I saw Goodyear Tire and Service Store, which started to
Yeah.
resonate with me again because that was just like the Big O tire store that I'd started at.
Hmm.
And I started looking at all the financial requirements, and you need $1 million to start this. And it's like, well, gosh, I don't have $1 million. We
Yeah.
had a house at the time, and so I really started talking to some contractors and some friends and some guys in the industry, and we leveraged our house and pulled 50 grand out.
Hmm.
They required 150,000 down to get this loan,
Yeah.
and,
Wow.
and they wanted to see that money up front. And all I had was 50,000 in equity in the house.
Hmm.
I was able to borrow 50,000 from my father-in-law and borrow 50,000 from my brother-in-law for 60 days, just so that
Yeah.
I could see the money that was in the account.
Right.
Once the loan was approved and the construction loan started, I was able to take several of the first draws and pay them because the
Mm.
amount they were loaning on was the appraised value of the building and not the actual cost. So
Mm.
it's finagling. I mean, if you look at the
Yeah.
statistics, you can't do it. And that's where so many people hit the brick wall when starting a new business. They're like, I don't have $2 million. I don't have $1
Hmm.
million. how do we do it? And it was honestly faith and perseverance that pushed through and made it
Absolutely.
that loan. And we built our first place 20 years ago. And then I was always looking for a second location, and that kind of happened in a similar fashion just a year and a
Yeah.
half ago. And
Wow.
30 minutes away from us, we almost had our house paid off, and we hawked it again, and
Yeah.
this whole thing all over again. But the second one was an existing building and business, where the first one I built from scratch, and
Yeah.
that's a humbling experience when you built a business from scratch and you don't have one customer. The day one, you don't have one customer besides your family.
Yeah. Wow. That's that's incredible. That's incredible. And I imagine, like, was it when you had the second location, knowing that it was an existing building, did that make it maybe like a little bit easier to kind of like scale it up a bit?
Yep. Yep. So when I met the owner that was trying to sell his business, he'd been there for 24 years. He was my age and he wanted to retire. He'd had enough. Here I
Yeah.
was looking to double down,
Hmm.
and he hadn't done much to improve the way he did business. He just kind of existed for 24 years, and he had a good
Hmm.
name and good reputation. But he opened up his books and he said, I have got nothing to hide. This is where we're at. I looked through his book, asked him 3 or 4 questions, and I could see the money he was leaving on the table by just apathy. He
Yeah.
wanted to get out so bad that he was charging labor rates that were 20 years old.
Hmm.
So just bringing the labor rates up to what his competitors were at was enough to cover the overhead, the loan on the building.
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, I know. I just want out. I just want to retire. I want to be done." So sure enough, the performers that we gave the bank, and we hit those numbers right out of the chute, and we were able to just darn near double what he was doing with what he already had in place. So
Hmm.
instead of building it from scratch like our old one, we were able to start making money day one, which is just awesome.
That's great. That's so cool, man. And it's just like you said, it's very humbling to start your business from like from scratch, from the ground up, and have no customers. And I can understand that too, especially just from my standpoint of starting a production company. Even though I had worked I did music videos, directed music videos and stuff before I actually started my company, but it was still the fact of like, I'm originally from Indiana. So starting in my hometown was there was where there was no sort of entertainment or arts or any creative kind of businesses out there that was doing commercial. Like it's definitely I understand that that situation that you're in. But of course that's more of something like your business is something that's more tangible. Mine is a bit different, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I wanted a business that that I didn't have to go when I was doing dent repair. I had to go out and knock doors. I had to go out
yeah,
and pound the pavement at dealerships and walk their lots. I wanted
yeah.
a business that people needed. People need tires. People need their cars fixed. So
Hmm.
that was awesome when you mentioned the fear of that. I remember the new business, fresh new parking lot, opening soon sign on the marquee. A semi
Hmm.
pulled in and unloaded a whole parking lot full of tires,
Wow,
and, and he drove off. And I signed this thing for $40,000 worth of tires, and I didn't have one customer. So that was a humbling experience
man.
to me. But
That's
when you said Indiana, though, I lived in Indiana for a couple of years, and it's awesome.
oh wow.
I lived in Logansport for
Okay, yeah,
few months, and then I moved down to Seymour, way down south, and then I moved
yeah.
to Carmel for about almost a year, and then I moved up to Mishawaka.
Oh yeah, Mishawaka is probably the closest. So I'm from a place called Angola, Indiana, which is
I am.
yeah, top right corner of the state. And it's just such a small town, like 8,000 folks. My family was like the first black family to like live in the town of Angola, so like we have like a bit of a history there. Also grew up in like Fort Wayne, or at least I was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana, the second largest
Yeah.
city. But that's really cool. Yeah. See, I always get surprised when people say they have a connection to Indiana because in California, there's like a few people I've met that say that they have connections and stuff to Indiana, and they never know about Angola. But that's why I'm here to help spread the message. But anyway, with the automotive shop, then like getting when you found the time, like or found that moment to start gaining customers and stuff. Now I've only been to Utah in passing. When I actually first moved to California, me and my family stopped in Salt Lake City, I believe. Just driving through, stopped there for a night and didn't really get to see too much of Utah. And of course, I've always wanted to go visit like Park City because of course they have Sundance over there, which is huge in the film industry. But and also I think they have one of the Ford Performance Racing schools, I think that is in Utah, I believe.
Willa, yeah, just outside of Salt Lake.
Yeah, I've been looking into that. Of course, I don't have a Raptor. I think you have to have a Raptor to be a part of in the Raptor the stuff that they do. But so I was looking at a lot of the videos and a lot of the different kind of content that's out there about that. But I would assume that Utah, because it's like such a, it's known for the outdoors, beautiful, just scenery. Was there a lot? I mean, trucks and stuff like that for people that are doing a lot with their vehicles, like was it hard to find like your first few customers, or was it just like, or how did that process go, I guess? Like where did it become when did it become like, I guess, visible for you to see like this is that you have more opportunities to start bringing in more customers, I guess, at a normal and easy pace for you?
Okay, so I started when I started my first shop. I coming from a big O tire store or
Mhm.
a dealership was the only thing I had in my mind, and I wanted to base it on the tire store where we just did easy stuff, alignments, tires, wheels, shocks,
Mhm.
brakes, suspension work. And that's what I wanted to do. That's what I expected to do when I opened, but that's not what came in the door. What came in the door was check engine lights and diagnostics and electrical and engine and transmission stuff. So we kind of had to adapt
Mm.
um, to that. But basically, everything that we've done for the last 20 years, at that shop was just everyday, regular, daily driver, automotive repair
Mhm.
and tires. When COVID hit, the whole world just kind of pulled
Yeah.
back a little bit. It was kind of scary. We had a pretty big earthquake here day one when COVID was announced and everything,
Oh, wow.
and that really added to the hype in the area here. And so
Yeah.
I remember being at work and 2 or 3 days, and there wasn't any there wasn't even traffic down the street, which is I'm on a
Wow.
busy street. It was just kind of eerie. And
Yeah.
I thought, you know what can I do? I need to kind of bring in something that's a niche. And somebody said, well, gosh, your Instagram, which I started just for fun because I've
Yeah.
always had the Raptor. I've had all 3 gens of Raptors. And they said, well, why don't you do something with the
Mhm.
Raptor? So I made a YouTube video that kind of
Mhm.
shows everything that I did to mine and why I did it and which components I used and why I used them, and then showed them in action. And it kind of blew up that first month. That first month we started that, I had 2
Yeah.
Raptors in for about $60,000 worth of modifications and upgrades just in the
Wow.
first month. And it
Yeah.
took several months to do this, but that kind of gave the Sterling's Wild West some direction other than just filming when we go out and play.
Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful. And then that's a perfect kind of step into the next question of just like when you got your first Raptor and just like what was your thoughts, of when Ford announced that they were making like this off-road Baja capable, type of truck. And basically I mean they've made their like I think at this point everyone can say that the Raptor is like the most elite of Ford's truck, and especially in my opinion, I think that's 100% true. What was that like for you, and like I guess what pushed you to get that truck specifically?
Well, this might surprise you a little bit, but I've always had trucks.
Hmm.
That doesn't surprise you, but a buddy of mine called and said this was back in 2010 when the Raptors came out. I hadn't even heard of the Raptors. I didn't spend much
Wow.
time on social media. I hadn't even heard the Raptor, and he called and said, "Hey, I just saw a Ford Raptor down there. That looks like you. That's a vehicle you would buy." And I go, "A what?" Ford Raptor, and I went right to Google and I saw something that I'd never seen before.
Wow.
And so I mean it was funny from that moment. I went right to my a friend of mine who was a GM at the Ford dealership
Hmm.
and placed my order for the first four-door Gen 1 Raptor, which was a 2011. I got the
Yeah.
molten orange. I placed the order and waited for 3-4 months, and it came in, and that's where it started. But the Gen 1, I didn't do any modifications to. I
Yeah.
just kind
Yeah.
of drove it the way it was. I
Yeah.
had a lot of fun with it, and I've got a letter for the Ford Racing School that you brought up. I
Hmm.
got a letter for each Raptor that I got, but I've never really gone, even though it's in
Hmm.
my backyard. I haven't gone because I was pretty confident that everything I was already doing was
Yeah.
over and above the level of
Yeah.
stupid that they were going to teach you to do at Ford Racing School.
Right, right, right. Yeah. Because I've seen a lot of the videos. They definitely show you the kind of the ins and outs of how to like work a lot of the different modes on the Raptor, and especially this kinds of terrain that's out in Utah and places like that. That's really cool. I mean, yeah, I mean, like, because the Raptor was just it was really just an iconic truck, right? Like when it came out, I think it became like, because already Ford F-150, of course, that's the most sold vehicle in America, which is already huge. And then when you add to the Raptor being pretty much the best off-road truck and being that way for a very long time, there wasn't really much competition. And now you're starting to see, a bit of competition. But I mean, that's amazing. I mean, what I guess kind of speaking on the different generations, right? Gen 1 was awesome and incredible. And then Gen 2 came out, no V8. Of course, that was like a big controversy. And then now we have Gen 3, which is uh similar to Gen 2, but just definitely a bigger facelift, I guess. And now, of course, the Raptor R, which is, I mean, that's probably the best truck that Ford has ever
Yeah.
made. I guess
Yeah.
what is your thoughts on just like on the different generations that have came out with, and what is your favorite generation of the Ford Raptor?
Well, the Gen 1 obviously is iconic. It was the only Raptor that was under the special vehicle team, the
Hmm.
SVT logo, and some of the stats that kind of stick in my mind is when they hit the Gen 2, they started really ramping up production. In fact, I read somewhere that in 2017, the first year of the Gen 2, they sold more Raptors in
Hmm.
2017 than the whole SVT lineup prior, from 2009 or 10 to
Wow.
14 when they stopped.
Yeah.
So of course, loving that first Raptor, I put 100,000 miles and I sold it to my nephew who still drives it to this day. So I still get to see
Yeah.
it and service it. But
Yeah.
getting to Gen 2, the shocks were bigger, there was more
Yeah.
suspension travel, but then, the engine was smaller. But
Hmm.
gosh, when you get in the throttle, you felt that torque, you felt that extra horsepower and a
Yeah.
lot more torque. And by the time we got through doing the performance mods on the Gen 2, we were pushing close to 600 horse, which
Hmm.
is 150. Well, that's almost 200 horse more than what the V8 was. So all these guys are like,
Yeah.
oh, the noise. And it's like, well, gosh, if it throws you in the seat harder,
Yeah. Yeah.
cares if it has fewer cylinders. And I was able to take the Gen 2 up Sand Mountain in Utah. That's the sand
Hmm.
dunes in Utah, and Chokecherry at St. Anthony in Idaho. I
Yeah.
still believe that I hold the record for the first street vehicle up the face of both of those, and it was all due to the power and torque of that Gen 2 V6.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I had the pleasure last year for the very first time ever to drive a Ford Raptor. I took a trip to Colorado. I just got done working on a movie in LA, and I said, you know what, I need a break. And I had made some pretty good money from the movie, so I was like, I want to go ahead and rent a Raptor and drive in one of my favorite places. I love Colorado. Colorado is one of my favorite places to go to. I drove around pretty much all over. I drove through Denver to Boulder. I drove all the way to Aspen. And I loved it. I didn't really get to do two. I did one kind of off-road thing. I was trying to go to this I forget the exact name, but there's like a ghost town in Colorado, somewhere near Aspen. And I was driving to the area, and I kind of got off road at one point, going like up an incline, and it was interesting because like it was really snowy and stuff as well. There's a lot of snow on the ground, and I think I put it in like the slippery mode or whatever mode it was in the Gen 2.
Yeah.
I mean, and it handled it really well, and I've not, I'll say this, I've not been a person that has driven too many trucks in my life. I mainly have driven like, just regular sedans or like SUVs a lot, but I think rather recently I've been having, like, since I've worked in the industry, I've had more of that opportunity to work or to drive like bigger vehicles like box trucks and sometimes certain off-road working trucks like that. But the Raptor, it was just so amazing. I loved it, every single bit of it. I didn't even really care about, because I like to hike and stuff. I did that a lot in Colorado, but I just wanted to spend as much time as I could in that Raptor. And then also I went to the Los Angeles Auto Show, which I'm wearing one of their shirts. Went to there last year, and that's why I actually got to see the Raptor R in person and got to sit in that. And it's beautiful, right? It's amazing. It's really badass. They brought the V8 back. I wish I want to drive. I've seen one on the road since I've just been, kind of out and about. I've seen one on the road here in California. What are your thoughts on them bringing the V8 back, and now that we have the Raptor R? I mean, I know that you said that you have one on the way. What is your thoughts on that?
So the Raptor R, I remember hearing about it a long time ago. In fact, I don't know if you remember this, back when they launched the first Raptor back in '09, they had an R version. Do you remember that? It wasn't for sale. It was they just built one and they called it the Raptor R. And back then it was $100,000.
Yeah.
And it had, a roll cage and bigger, more power and more suspension.
Yeah.
But it was called the R, and it never did get produced, but it was introduced to us back then. So that's the first time the R that we had a taste of it, and then nothing for years and years. And so I knew that if they ever did bring that back, especially with the 6-cylinder here, and I'm going to deviate for 1 second. You'll have to bring me back in line, but a lot of people don't realize that car manufacturers are held to CAFE standards. It's called CAFE standards. And so over their whole spectrum of vehicles that they produce, they have to hold to a certain fuel economy. And they're getting it in so many different ways. They're getting it with thinner fluids in the transmission and transfer case and louvers in front of the radiators and all these things to eke out the best. When everybody's going, well, okay, if we have CAFE standards, how can they bring this V8 back?
Yeah.
Biggest reasons that they can bring this V8 back is the Lightning coming out. It doesn't use any gas at all. And so they have some leeway here for a few years to kick out 10-mile-a-gallon trucks. And that's why Ford's said that they're only going to release 7,500 Rs total over 3 waves. And so when I first heard that the R's coming, I instantly thought, there's no way. There's going to be so many people want one, and you will get one. I initially said, when it's released, I'll probably won't go for it. I don't want to fight. I don't want to be the guy, walking over heads to get their Raptor R. Time came closer and closer. And of course, I was breathing and eating and sleeping the Raptor R. So July 18th of last year was the release date. And I'd already got a hold of my dealer weeks before the release date. He says, hey, I want to be first to order the Raptor R. And he goes, the Raptor what? The guy at the dealership didn't even know what was coming. And so he said, hey, I'll do some research. He called me back and said, you're right. On the 18th at 4 p.m., order banks will open and I'll put your order. And he called me at 4:01 on the 8th. I placed my order with the color and the sunroof. Those are the only 2 things you can pick.
Yep.
The order is still that I'm the first one that my dealership will get. However, they've had issues. They've had oil leaking issues, and so they halted production for a period of time. So now they're back up, and I'm just waiting. I called them a couple of weeks ago, and they said, you should be anytime now. But I'm telling you, I waited longer for the R than I did my 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Yeah, I have been hearing about those I think it's what the transmission fluid. I think that has been leaking in a few of the Raptor R. I've seen that. I haven't really looked too much into it. I haven't seen any like videos posted about them, but I mean, and that is unfortunate. But I mean, the Raptor R just existing is incredible. I never realized that there was a Raptor R way back then in 2009. I mean, but that brings up a good point though, because one thing that I've noticed Ford has done a lot, and I think a lot of automotive companies do this, is where they kind of reuse some of the names. Like Ford Lightning, of course, is a reuse of a name. Ford Maverick is a reuse of the name. So like that makes a lot of sense, But yeah, the Raptor R is incredible, and just when I sat in the one at the Los Angeles Auto Show with that, I think it was the like azure color or whatever it's called. It was so, I mean, it's just, I wish I could just fire it up right there in the auto show. I mean,
that's my color. That's the color out of the azure gray.
Yeah, azure gray. Yep. It's incredible.
Being the Gen 2 brought me into a whole new world of sand, because the Gen 1 was heavy, underpowered, and it didn't do very well in the sand at all. I had to go around in sand in low range. And when we go to Idaho, we go for a week, and we spend a week in the dunes. And I'm the only guy that's doing it with a cup holder, AC, and inside of my nice Raptor,
right? Yeah.
4-wheelers and everything else. But I can go anywhere that they can go. Only when the Gen 2 came out and I had that extra power. So I'm most excited about the R for the sand dunes, because it's going to be a dune machine.
Crazy. Yeah, because I think it's what the Baja exhaust mode that you can change it to. Not the, well, there's the Baja exhaust mode, but when you get into Baja mode, it's just like incredible. You turn on that front camera with the off-road and it's just seamless, and I hope one day I'm able to either get a Raptor myself. They're a Raptor R myself. They're very expensive. $100-some thousand is definitely, you're starting to see trucks creep up in that range a lot more now. Of course, you got the Hummer EV. Of course, that's the EV, but that's a pretty big vehicle, and that's $100-some thousand. I think the TRX is somewhere close to that. I mean, they're definitely getting up there, but I mean, Raptor R, I think, is 100% worth it. And the Raptor R has been beating. I've seen videos against the TRX. It's been beating the TRX in a couple of different races now.
Exactly.
And that is beautiful. I want to talk to you about your thoughts just on Ford, right? Just in general. One thing that I have noticed heavily about Ford specifically is that Ford has kind of changed up how I guess they're running their business in the American market, right? In terms of them just now being able to sell just trucks, SUVs, crossovers, and stuff like that. They've stopped manufacturing like the Ford Focus or the Ford Fusion or Ford Taurus, any of those kind of cars or sedans. And of course, they still have the Mustang, because the Mustang is such an iconic name and brand in the vehicle. So of course, they're going to continue doing that. But I guess, what is your kind of thoughts on their change up in the American market? Me personally, I think that it's a kind of a genius move. That they're kind of focusing on that. I know that the CEO of Ford kind of mentioned recently that they didn't make as much money last year in terms of like just their overall sales, but which is still just a whole lot, of course. But what is your thoughts on that? I guess their change up of not selling any more sedans or anything like that, or just overall how they've changed in the American market.
Well, I think everybody finds themselves being successful in life doing what they do best, pursuing exactly what you do best. And Ford, obviously, with the F-150, hit it out of the park, and trucks just in general. That's kind of that. Of course, that was their first vehicle they built, and well, I guess it wasn't the first truck, but they had a truck version of the Model T, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, they were kind of known for the assembly line company, but yeah, I think they just figured out to throw their money where they do best, and that's trucks and SUVs, and I think this is where geniuses like Elon Musk has come in, and everybody thinks, when I pulled into my driveway with a Tesla, they're like, "What are you doing? You're a Ford guy. You're a gas, you're a gas hog guy. What are you doing?" I says, "Hey, if it's fast, it's fast." And It's brilliant. So companies like Tesla has kind of filled that sedan segment.
Hmm.
We call it an SUV. It looks like a car, but I think Ford
Yeah,
just
yeah,
and they're doing very well at what they do best, and they still can't make enough. They still can't make enough trucks.
yeah. I mean, it's Ford. I really, it's interesting. I mean, I think as I've gotten older, is how I've gotten more interested in some of the automotive industry stuff. Like, I pay attention to a lot of different industries. Of course, the film industry, and I paid a lot. I paid a lot of attention to the automotive industry, and just in terms of how, at least with Ford, how they've kind of changed up their business market. And I know that the electrification of vehicles is becoming like a huge thing now. And I think Ford is actually building a factory in Michigan, I think, to like produce like a bunch of EVs in the future. Um, and yeah, I remember when we spoke on Instagram, you mentioned that you had, did services for Teslas and stuff too, I believe, or something like that.
Yeah, we do. We're hooked up with a company in California called Unplugged Performance, and we
Mm,
sell their components. They do all kinds of suspension upgrades,
yeah.
suspension components, alignment components, because they come without rear alignment abilities. So we're installing those. In fact, we were just out on a dry lake bed that had snow and ice on it,
Mm.
filming the Model Y Performance with the new unplugged suspension on it. So that video is about ready
Oh
to
wow.
launch. So
Oh,
that'll
that's really
kind of
cool.
show the install process, and then going out and showing it kind of in action. So
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. Tesla, I would say that the my most favorite vehicles that I've driven ever in my life, the Raptor being number one. It's just that's always going to be default number one. But when I did drive a Tesla Model 3 once before, and I liked it. I liked it a lot because it's very fast, and I just love the tech within a Tesla. I think the tech is what, and besides it being electric, I think the tech is what also kind of sells the experience of a Tesla. Like being able to sit in the vehicle and watch YouTube is kind of crazy to me, or watch Netflix, or to like,
more of a tech company than a car company,
hey, no,
personally.
exactly. I think there's a YouTuber named MKBHD, and he kind of talks about how like um how, yeah, it's basically there's this fight between the automotive companies and Tesla, in terms of like Tesla is like a tech company selling vehicles, but then you have like, these automotive companies that are trying to like, they're focused on building the automotive and maybe not so much heavily within the tech of certain
Yeah,
components. And I think when it comes to electric vehicles, I think that's kind of where Tesla begins winning. I mean, that's not the biggest component. I think the biggest component is mainly their supercharger, network of just all the different chargers. And now they've opened up. I think they opened up that patent for where they can use the other vehicles can start charging at the Tesla superchargers, which is crazy. But
yeah.
like, I guess what is your kind of thoughts, I guess, in the space of electrification of vehicles, because especially within the truck world, because I think the EV space for trucks have become very competitive recently with the Rivian, with the
Yeah.
Lightning, the Hummer EV. There's a bunch of, like, of course, Ram is coming out with their ugly looking electric truck. But what is your thoughts, I guess, on in that space?
So it's I like that we got on the topic of Tesla because we said they're a tech company, but they are a tech company, and therefore they don't have legacy automotive box that they have to fill. They don't have any of the old manufacturing things that legacy car companies have had to stay in
Hmm.
that box to progress. They came out with a car they thought completely out of the box when it come to the manufacturing process. I mean, you have a company like Tesla that the skateboard, the chassis of the car is
Hmm.
a front casting, a rear casting, and a battery pack.
Yeah.
And and that's the skateboard of the car. That's crazy. That's three parts
Hmm.
that any other car company would be hundreds of parts. I think
Yeah.
Elon's the best thing. I don't know exactly what he's saying, but he's saying the only thing better than a
Hmm.
part is no part. And so
Yeah.
has he has been able to shrink the number of components that go into a car and speed up that time on the assembly line and fasteners and all that kind of thing. That's
Yeah.
what that's what I love about the whole Tesla vibe.
Hmm.
Now we come back to Ford building the Lightning, they were first to the mass production of an electric truck because they already have the know-how and
Hmm.
already have a tried and true F-150 frame. All they had to do was come up with a way to put a battery and a rear drive unit in the
Hmm.
F-150. They had everything else in the bag.
Yeah.
So they were able to start ramping these out. But here's where I think Tesla is going to just surpass. When we talk about tech, the Cybertruck that's coming, I have one
Hmm.
on order. I
Oh,
think
wow. Yeah, yeah,
the Cybertruck's going to have technology that is going to blow our minds. I
yeah.
think some of the legacy automakers have no clue what the Cybertruck's going to bring. We
Yeah.
have diamond steering. We've got basically what the Cybertruck's going to offer us is steer by wire and brake by wire. So
Hmm.
we're not going to have any more physical connection from your foot to
Yeah. No steering column there.
a
Yeah.
steering column. This is going to be handled through the computer, and just the braking, the testing they're doing with Bosch
Hmm.
is the speed of the refresh rate of the ABS on this electronic braking is so much faster. You've driven a car, everybody's driven a car and hit some ice,
Hmm.
they can feel that feedback in their pedal, that vibration, that bzzz.
Yep. Hmm.
Well, the Tesla, this new braking system that the Cybertruck will have is 100 times faster. And so
Hmm.
some of the testing of these trucks showing them slowing down so fast that this is G-force because
Yeah.
these felt a vehicle stop that fast
Yeah.
because our ABS systems have been archaic and slow. And then along with the steering too, I think this steer by wire is going to be something, but I think that the Cybertruck is just going to be groundbreaking for more new automotive technology. And I think at
Absolutely.
that point we'll have to catch up.
Yeah.
I think the Ford is much better looking than the Cybertruck, but I think the
Yeah.
Cybertruck is going to stomp the Lightning as far as technology goes.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. Right before we actually hopped on the podcast, there's the YouTube channel TFL Truck. I was watching there. They just put out a video. There's the Work Truck Week show that happens in Indianapolis, and the Canoe. I don't know if you ever heard of that electric vehicle. It's basically like they have a truck version, but they also have a van. And basically this van is like a 7 passenger. It had the steer by wire situation, no steering column, and it also had. It's very interesting. Basically, the majority of the car is kind of like a glass panel. A lot of the roof is all glass. You can see kind of all throughout, almost kind of what you would see like in like the Tesla Model Y or the
Yeah.
Model 3 as well. But they even had at the very like kind of like where you're in the bumper area of the car, they had like a see-through glass in that as well. Just to
Oh,
help kind of like see, yeah, just kind of so you can see maybe just like I don't think they plan on doing too much off-roading with it because like when they use it more of an example of like a vehicle that's just driving throughout the busy city and stuff like that. But um very interesting in terms of like the steer by wire technology and just what that's able to do. And I've heard a little bit of brake by wire as well. I think the Lightning, what one thing I appreciate about the Lightning, I actually got to kind of look a little bit more into the Lightning when I was at the auto show, but it's Ford, of course. Yeah, they stick to their classic and iconic kind of name plate,
yeah.
with an F-150, and I think it's really cool that you can, of course, power your house with
Oh, yeah.
the Lightning. They have huge. The front space is huge. It's pretty fast as well. But I guess the Lightning is also one of those. It's not all that exciting when it comes to like some of the electric truck space right now. I think the Rivian to me has held a lot of interest and like I've wanted to drive a Rivian a lot because Rivians to me just they have a very cool look to them.
Yeah.
And I think Rivian is also one of those companies that is starting to they've had a little bit of kind of some negative light in the press just in terms of like funds and whatnot and what that could do for them in the future. But I think Rivian I think they were like kind of that shocker is that nobody expected them to come out also at a pretty good time and bring out their truck and also be able to really compete
Yep.
against like the Lightning and of course Tesla now, which the Cybertruck it's been what it's been when I forget when they released, like, even
I
announced that
think
back.
3 years ago was before COVID.
Yeah, I think it was 20. I want to say it was 2019 because I
Yeah.
remember seeing it right when that's when I had moved to California, was in 2019. And I think I remember watching that whole when they threw the the ball at the truck
Yeah.
and basically destroyed the window. But um and you're starting to see more about Tesla Cybertrucks being, out and about, or they're doing more testing on it. And I think you're right. The Cybertruck is going to surprise a lot of people. And I think honestly it's going to be it's well, I think it will definitely take the reins of probably the truck EV in that space.
Yep.
I almost don't see anyone outdoing them kind of for a while, because we look at Ram's electric truck. It looks like they're following something similar to what Ford has done. Like, they had that concept that they had, which was really cool, with the jumper seat in the back,
Yeah.
and just like the suicide doors. It did look really cool. But when they actually put out the real production version, it looks like they're following the same lines of Ford, of just keeping it kind of classic to what they have with the Ram 1500 line and stuff like that. Um, but I don't know. The EV space is interesting. Do you think that they'll ever do an electrification of a Raptor?
Wow. I don't know. I think there's limitations. When I go out in the desert, I count on a 500-mile range, and
Hmm.
that's gonna be hard to hit.
Yeah.
Even when you're off-roading and pushing it hard to get 300 miles off-road. I think suspension is another limitation, and that was one of the downfalls with the Lightning. Is the rear suspension had to be changed from something that was designed to carry weight
Hmm.
to something that had to facilitate a drive unit. And
Yeah.
so it feels, everybody that I've talked to, other YouTubers, have had this thing off road. The
Hmm.
back end feels real funny. It doesn't feel like a truck. It feels like the front of
Yeah.
a car instead of a
Mhm.
back of a truck, which is exactly what it is.
Yeah. And I think the only thing that makes me think that a Raptor electrification could happen is kind of the Hummer EV, right? And I guess because the Hummer EV is it's a massive vehicle. Like,
Yeah.
it's massive. And I think it weighs almost over 10,000 pounds or something like that. And it's able to be faster than a Raptor R or a TRX or almost any of them. And it's kind of insane. But, like, I agree. I haven't seen too many vehicle, or I guess, videos, or any kind of reviews about how, like, a Rivian does off road, because Rivian is, of course, that's capable for it. I've never heard too much about Lightning being off road. And of course, with the Raptor being such a off road vehicle,
Yeah.
I think electrification would be strange. But also, what I think is tough for electric truck specifically, and I know this is like I think this is the biggest negative about electrification with trucks, is that when it comes to, like, towing capacity, like, your battery is going to be your
Oh,
range is going to deplete a lot.
yeah.
um and I kind of have heard underneath in the throughout the people in the industry that I work with, that there was a commercial for a I don't know if it was for a vehicle or for some kind of modification that they want to have for trucks, specifically when it comes to towing. But there's I think when what's it called, when South by Southwest comes out, they're going to be announcing, apparently, something that's going to be able to help with electric trucks and the towing, and then the range, basically, like, being able to add more to the range while trucks are towing.
Oh, right.
But I want to say it also kind of accompanies with a, like, startup a vehicle, startup truck that they're actually creating with it too. So
Yeah.
I have heard that. We'll see if that comes around. I'm sure that'll be talked about, amongst the community. But um, yeah, I would hope that. I think it would be cool if they did an electrification of that. But I think it's going to be tough, because if Tesla comes out and puts out the Cybertruck and it has even more range than, like, what the Model Y or the Model S's have, over like 400 miles, I think that's just the biggest downfall, kind of, right? Is that there's sometimes the amount of range that a lot of these electric cars are given is kind of making people back off on the idea of wanting to have an electric vehicle.
Yeah.
Because even when I hopped in the Raptor in Colorado and I filled it up, right, I paid I don't even know, it was a lot of money for
Bottom line.
for the gas. I was actually very surprised that I think on a full tank it was somewhere around 600 ish. I was actually very surprised. And even when I drove to Aspen from Denver, that was about a 3-4 hour drive. I mean, it handled that really easy. I mean, it's a very like road trip type of vehicle, and I
Comfortable.
love that,
Yeah.
and that was really awesome. Um, I want to break off now into talking a little bit about the film aspect of what you've done. Because that is what, like I said, that's what has drew me a lot into what you have created with your entire brand and stuff with Sterling Wild West. I kind of, before I get into, like you said, you had a son that is into film, and that's kind of, I guess maybe that was kind of how you got connected into doing things. Um, what what do you know about his interest in film, and how did you kind of become interested in it and realize that you could kind of use that to build your brand, like on Instagram or on YouTube and stuff like that? Like how did those two things become to be?
So it's my oldest son. His name is Ashton, and he's the one that said he's the one that gave the account its name. He's the one that
Okay.
said, Dad, you have cool stuff. You need to start an Instagram. And it's like, I don't want to do, he's the one that
Yeah.
pushed. And so he's the one that said, let's go out. He took some of his camera equipment and he put the first few videos together and he made it cool.
Yeah.
And that's when the spark started to happen in me,
Mm.
and getting really interested in the whole film world.
Hmm.
However, as a caveat here, Instagram doesn't like highly produced videos. They just like crap they shot on your phone.
Right, right,
Still
right.
gives me satisfaction to make something beautiful and cinematic. But
Yeah.
to be all fair, any drone shot that looks professional,
Hmm.
anything that you can tell came out of a nice camera and looks great,
Hmm.
that was all Ashton. He was behind that in some way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
I've learned over the last 3 or 4 years, just being with him as he started his film career,
Hmm.
similar to yours, in
Hmm.
just going from job to job. I mean,
Yeah.
it's something
Hmm.
different than what I always wanted. I wanted that steady paycheck, and
Yeah.
he's so passionate about
Hmm.
creation, and the things that he's done are so beautiful and so creative that he's willing to go months between the next job. And so that's why I have him at my disposal. If he's in between jobs, hey
Yeah.
Ash, let's go out, let's get the equipment. And therefore I've been able to acquire equipment. I've purchased equipment because we used to rent, and I damaged some rentals. I don't know if one went viral. There was a
Yeah.
Ronin and a Komodo that went bouncing off of, and that was
Yeah.
because I'm not a grip guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a lock lever, So
Is that the one where it had it was the Gen 1 Raptor?
yeah,
That
in
was,
Mexico.
yeah.
It was in Mexico. And we pull over. I pulled everything out. I rigged up the arm on the side of the truck, and that was a brand new red Komodo and
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
fairly new Ronin. And I put the Ronin on. Ash was busy. It was just the two of us, and
Yeah.
we were filming a Raptor group,
Hmm.
ironically in Mexico, called
Hmm.
Dirt Days, and we were filming them anyway. That was right out of the shoot, and I thought this would be cool for some BTS through a GoPro on the side of the truck. Let's
Yeah.
catch
Yeah.
this, and it was awesome. And then all of a sudden, it just, well, yeah,
That video went unbelievably viral.
it
That's
did.
insane. That's yeah, that video was on every film, like every film page that I followed, every
Yeah,
Raptor page. That is really cool that I'm speaking, that you were a part of that.
it was me, and in fact, Ashton is the one that posted the video, and I think he said when you let your what is it, DP,
Yeah,
rig the
yeah,
thing, and obviously I don't know anything about it, and
yeah.
he shouldn't have been letting me do this, which I've since learned.
Oh man.
But anyway, that turned out great. That brand new Komodo had a cheap Canon lens on it, which the
Mhm.
lens broke in half.
Oh wow. From
So
that, wow.
the camera was covered, and then the Ronin, as it tumbled,
Yeah.
protected the Komodo. So the Komodo wasn't scratched. We
Wow.
filmed with it for the rest of the week, but the gimbal was destroyed, and I was able to
Yeah.
send it to DJI, and they fixed it for $1,800.
Oh, that's good.
So at the end of the day, it was an $1,800 mistake.
That's crazy. That video went viral. I mean, I seen that video. I still see that video sometimes randomly on certain film pages, you know, because there's a lot
Yeah.
of film pages where they'll just cover different stuff like that. And I mean, that's actually really cool that you were part of that. Of course, it wasn't cool at that moment, I'm sure.
No, no, and it's
All that
funny.
stuff happening.
You read the dregs of humanity that comment on this kind of thing, and they're just. I mean, I had Raptor friends that were into film
Yeah.
that blocked me because they said I was so unprofessional. You know, how unprofessional can you be? And it's like, dude, we're out with an off-road group. We have a bare minimum staff. We have a guy that knows
Yeah.
what he's doing, and me that doesn't know a thing about it. Anyway,
We were filming. We had a Porsche and we had our two Talon inside, and then we had I forget the name of their company, and I'm sorry to the people who may be listening who I can't remember their name. I want to say there was Ultra Arm SF, but they had like a blacked out Porsche Macan, and
Motor
they had
crane.
the motor crane, yeah.
Oh.
And I remember they were getting a shot, and I might put the footage along with the video on YouTube here, but like they basically they were filming the car, they were basically filming like this, and they had their crane more out to this way, and they hit a bunch of parked cars. They hit a bunch of parked cars with the camera and basically destroyed. The shoot ended like early that day. It was really, really bad. I want to say they also kind of damaged the car that we had. I don't want to put that information out, but I want to say the car window got damaged too from that somehow. But yeah, that was pretty crazy. But I mean, a lot of stuff like that is kind of bound to happen sometimes, depending on the rig or like what's going on. If it's super high speed, like in that video of that you were part of in Mexico, I mean, I don't know how fast you guys were going in that time, but sometimes there's been a few productions where I've been on where they'll go at a pretty decent speed. Like, of course, they'll go usually maybe like a 20 to 30 miles per hour, but then sometimes they really will speed it up in certain environments and just, it's bound to happen. So with you investing in the equipment then, right? Was it your son that kind of said, "Hey dad, like this is something that like people do on certain productions," or did you kind of were you able to do kind of your own research to kind of figure out like, okay, I can go ahead and rig these type of things on my Raptor, and this is the kind of equipment I'm going to need. Like, was it him that kind of gave you some of that information, or did you kind of do some of your own research as well?
So he was on a job for a tire company out of Finland called Nokian, and we were out at Swing Arm City in Utah. That seems to be the popular place where they shot the TRX commercial. He was out there shooting an FJ Cruiser and a Tacoma, the overlanding trucks that were running their tires. And he said, "Dad, this is off-road. We need a camera. We need a car that we can hang a camera on that's capable. Can we take your Raptor?" And I said, "Yeah, but I come with it."
Right.
And so I came with him on that job, and I watched how the guys rigged all the stuff on the truck. And I thought, well, that's about as farm as you can get. I mean, you're just throwing stuff on. So it was watching them and then doing the driving for that led me to buy the equipment to actually do it for our own stuff.
Yeah. Wow. So what gear was it that you kind of acquired? Like you mentioned, of course, the Komodo, the Ronin. Like what gear did you kind of look into getting first for yourself?
So the first thing I got was the Ronin, because the rental company doesn't even know that I ruined their gimbal because I hurried up and bought a new one and returned the new one.
Oh,
and
wow.
I sent the old one to get fixed, and they put all new pieces on. So at the end of the day, it was new. So we rented it again and swapped it back. And that was years ago. And
oh, wow.
so that was my first acquisition, was the Ronin, because we damaged it. And next thing I bought, and it kind of led me to do that, was the arm that we had rented for the thing. I don't know. It just wasn't a good arm. I don't even
Hmm.
know the brand of it, but I was watching online and Motocrane made the Ultra Isolator, which was a really cool.
Hmm.
It looked like it had an actual air shock in it, and it had
Mm.
several hydraulic cylinders to dampen everything. It was just a much better looking arm, so I ordered that.
Hmm.
And we've just acquired lenses and mounts for monitors in the cab, and
Hmm.
just it just kind of grows over time, and you get more and more and more. And of course, the
Yeah.
guys that he shoots with will all bring their collection of equipment,
Yeah.
like I've got over the years, you know.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, did you also do you also own, I guess, any kind of cinema camera of your own that you'll do any work with, or?
No, that those are big investments, and they're technology, so they're constantly updating. And you
Hmm.
know, if I'd have bought a red when I wanted to, it would be completely out of date right now. So once
Yeah.
again, you know, one of Ashton's filmmaking friends will have access to one or have one. So we
Hmm.
always, it's usually the people that we work with, whoever's got the newest camera or whoever wants to be a part of it, because they may have a camera, but they don't have all the other stuff that we have. So it
Hmm.
just makes it easy for everybody to come together and, hey, let's get our parts together, our equipment together, and
Hmm.
make something cool.
And that's perfect, because I can imagine just how a lot of those productions would go, obviously, because it's like, of course, like, he's thinking, of course, I'm sure your son is thinking, like, okay, yes, I'm going to bring out the different crew that I need for this. And of course, my dad's going to be operating the truck. So, like, that's a payment for you, that's an experience for you. And like, I'm sure that just also kind of upped the ante with not just with like what you're able to do with the Raptor, but also just the overall business that you encompass, because you did commercials for, like you said, you have a commercial coming out for the Unplugged, with the Tesla, the modifications for that. Like, how often how often has it been that you've been able to, with your son, go and create these commercials for the different companies around the area in Utah or in other places, or even just doing commercials for your business as well, the two automotive shops that you own? Like, how often are you able to create content for others and for yourself?
Gosh, we've at least 3 or 4 times a year, you know, to have a big project. I don't know if you saw the Porsche one that we did with
Hmm.
the draft horse. That took 3 or 4 months to finish, and then another
Wow.
month in sound and color. But
Yeah, yeah.
that
Yep.
was just, and so I was there for the whole day, and that there was 4 or 5 shoot days, but I was there for the car in the desert, because my truck once
Hmm.
again was the film truck. And then he had a couple other areas that he was at. But I've grown to love it since that first time he asked to use my
Hmm.
truck to rig a camera. It kind of gets in your
Yeah.
blood.
Yeah.
And for somebody that has, you know, an Instagram behind the scenes with a cool truck like we're
Hmm.
talking, and cool camera
Hmm.
gear, is like, well, that's, you know, cool factor times 10.
Yeah.
So, and that's where the hype is. That's what Instagram wants to see, is the hype. Like I said, they don't want to see the beautiful finished product. They kind of they kind of crap on that, but they
Yeah.
like to see all the other stuff, which goes crazy, you know, especially the
Yeah.
fail. Anything fail.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That is so cool. And like, so you use your Gen 2 for usually for those jobs, right?
The Gen 2 is gone. We did use a lot of the Gen 2, but I've
Yeah.
used the Gen 3 quite a bit.
Okay. Yeah. So
Yep.
you use the Gen 3 for the work. So I imagine when the Raptor R comes in, of course, there's going to be a lot, and I can't wait. I can't wait for the content to pour out on your page about the Raptor R when that gets here, and the Cybertruck too. Um, do you think that you'll use the Raptor R in any capacity with some of that work? I mean, I
Oh,
almost, because it's so like overpowered. I can only
yeah.
imagine what use case scenario you'd want to put that in.
Everybody asks, you know, so much money. Are you gonna, you know, put it in the garage and rub it with a diaper? And it's like, no, I'm gonna beat the guts out of it just like I do any of the other trucks.
Yeah, that's so cool. So I mean, like, it's just incredible, just once again, like, just hearing the stories that you're able to do with that, because I think as I continue to scale my production company, I think to myself, like I did, of course, I sent you the Lexus spec commercial that I did, which funny enough, we didn't have any sort of rigging at all for that particular commercial. Even though a lot of those shots that I had with, just the camera out in the open road, it would have been much better with some sort of rigging. We just didn't have, that was just something that I basically kind of produced my own, and I didn't have any budget to really push out getting some of those folks like Ultra Arm to be a part of it, or just be able to do a rig myself, or even have the people to, to be able to rig something up for me. I thought about maybe that would be a good purchase, but at the end of the day, I don't, in terms of my client base right now, I don't do as much car commercial work for my own company, but I would like to do more of that. I would love to do like I seen the behind the scenes of how they did the Ford when they did the commercial for the Raptor R. I seen the behind the scenes of that, and I mean that was incredible. And I think they shot that in Utah actually.
Yeah,
I think
it was out at Knowles, which we've shot out there several times,
yeah,
and it's the company that did all the specialty camera movement was good friends of my son's in the film business too.
yeah, yeah, and it's I mean that commercial was incredible. Like that was an awesome commercial, and just what they did with that. They had, I think, and because they shot it at night, and I know that there's one shot that I remember seeing where they have, I think, another Raptor, and they're driving through the desert, and I don't know if the camera was on. I'm sure the camera must have been on this other Raptor, but they also had like a gigantic light on the truck as well.
Right.
And it was so cool, and it was just one of the coolest things I'd ever seen. And I've never gotten a chance to do a commercial for Ford. I've only done commercials with like Toyota and of course Turo and stuff. Those are the only bigger car commercials I've worked on. But definitely one of my goals is to work with Ford, I think, on a commercial, because I've always liked their stuff. Kind of off tangent, but did you happen to see the Ram when they announced their electric truck, that commercial that popped up on the Super Bowl? Did you ever see that?
Gosh, I don't think so. What was it? No.
I'll say it is hilarious, and I'll give some. I don't hate Ram. I think Ram does have some good vehicles. I don't think they're as good as the Raptor, but their commercial was talking about what was it, pre-electrification. and basically the way they talk about it is they talk about it as in like, oh, somebody who's maybe not performing well, like in their sex life with like their partner or whatever, and they use that type of thing in terms of electrification. And when you first see the commercial, you can't even really tell what it's about to be about. I didn't realize it was going to be about the Ram truck, but I think it probably was the best commercial during the Super Bowl this year.
Oh, I got to see it now. I got to see it.
It was hilarious. It was very, very funny. For the people watching on YouTube and stuff, I'm gonna link it down below. But that was hilarious. One last question for you, Sterling. What is your dream vehicle? Like, if you had to just create one from the ground up, from all the different experiences, from different vehicles that you were in, what would your dream vehicle be like? Or if your dream vehicle already exists, what would it be?
Yeah, it's funny you ask. My neighbor, he drives a minivan, and I said, Bert, if you could have any vehicle in the world, what kind of minivan would it be? And we laughed. But if you ask the question, what would be my dream vehicle, and it would be what I'm driving. I'm constantly driving my dream vehicle. So my current dream vehicle is the one that's not here yet.
Yeah.
Azure Gray Raptor R. When it gets here, it's got a stack of mods ready to go, and in fact, it's got a new Instagram channel that is just sitting there on idle, waiting to go for exclusive R content.
If
you've seen Instagram, the new stuff that comes out is always the same stuff. It'll be a camera swipe of the grill, and then a swipe of the taillights, and a swipe. And it's like, once you've seen 10 of those, you've seen it. I want to see this truck in action. I want to see this truck sliding sideways. I want to see it doing stuff. And so that's the kind of stuff we produce. But
Oh yeah. And I'm sure that all the different people that follow you and that are fans of Raptors can't wait for that. Like I know I can't wait to see that content for sure when that comes out. I guess one other last question. Um, how has that felt for you to have 87,000 followers on Instagram? Like I'm sure that wasn't maybe the like plan to like to have like to encompass so much people that just love your content and just love Raptors as much as you do. Like, I mean, how does that feel for you? I mean, what how do you navigate that if
Well,
that's even a thing to navigate?
it's funny. I've often been disappointed in the growth when I see I have two or three friends that have almost twice the amount of followers with a fraction of the number of posts. So
Yeah.
they're doing so much more with so much less because they're doing those things that Instagram wants. And so
Hmm.
mine, and in fact, I've got several big influencers. One of them, Stuart Webb, is a good friend of mine. His whole business is social media, and he's like, I can't believe you're only at 87,000. I mean, that's cool, but
Yeah.
and 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 that's because I haven't wanted to put in that the mundane interaction. I don't know. Instagram rewards you for all this stuff, and I haven't spent the time to interact a lot with other accounts because it's almost like I have to post every day. So Ashton keeps bringing me that, you know, keep it up. It'll reward. And of course, when COVID hit and we started the Raptor builds, it was all because of the Instagram, and so it's just kind of blossomed and gone from there. But I don't even think about it, but it is kind of awesome.
Yeah. It's very awesome. It's very awesome that you're able to do that, to just build your page is I mean up to that point. I mean, I think it's great that there's a community out there that loves Raptors a lot. You know, I think I think any kind of like, you got people who love Broncos a lot, which I also think the Ford Bronco is an amazing vehicle too. You got people who love, TRXs and Rams and all
Yeah.
those other kind of vehicles. But it's just great that you've been able to build it up. And I believe that the more stuff that you continue to do just within, in the film space in Utah, which also I think that also kind of interests me a lot, is that I'm only really privy to the film space here in California, which is, pretty much the biggest, I guess, film space in America, right? With
Yeah.
Hollywood and even the Bay Area, like here in like Oakland, San Francisco, there's a surprising amount of work here with all the different tech companies and stuff. And then also just even car commercials, right? I think they actually shoot, the Bay Area is known for shooting the most car commercials like in America, like in terms of
Yeah.
just, there's always a lot of stuff happening like Lake Tahoe area, San Francisco kind of a little bit now, a little bit less since, all of COVID and all the different stuff they've been doing in the city. But it's great to hear that Utah has like a film space there too. I'm always interested to see what other areas are like, because personally, like, there might be days where I'd love to visit Utah and work, be able to work out there sometime or just anything like that. So it's cool to hear that there is a market out there like that of people either traveling to Utah to shoot or just, local creators and filmmakers, they're working on stuff. So that's really cool. Um, one thing I like to do is I always make sure that my guests have give like a message, a positive message that they can maybe give to whoever's listening here. And I have two specifically that I would like for you to possibly speak on. First one would be, what would you tell to somebody who was in your position years ago when you were starting your business from the ground up? And just like you said, just like when there's something that needs $1 million or $2 million to start up either a franchise or just to start up a startup. I guess with all that you've been able to do with your business and with your brand that you've done with the Raptor on your Instagram, and just being able to be a part of, creating different ads and stuff for different companies, just what would you give to somebody who's maybe at the beginning of that point, just wanting to start their business in the automotive industry or wanting to start up their own brand? What message would you give them?
Gosh, a few things that come to mind would be consistency. It seems that we live in a world of instant gratification, and if you start something, it doesn't happen, in the first month, week, year, whatever. We tend to give up and move on. So if it's something you're passionate about, continue. Just like my son said, Dad, just keep posting. Just just keep feeding it, and it'll pay off someday. And what's funny is he's told me to do it, but he hasn't done it with his own. But anyways,
Yeah.
he's busy doing other stuff. But
Yeah.
but gosh, that right now, I could name a dozen successful people just from the Raptor community and from just Instagram, just people that I met on Instagram like yourself that are successful just by the day-to-day grind and doing what you love, even if it costs you a steady paycheck, even if it costs you whatever, you sacrifice and you do it, and it always pays off at the end of the day. And I remember I was home. I worked swing shift years and years ago on some job that I took. I was only there for a month, but I was home in the middle of the day, angry that I didn't have my own business yet. And I was watching an Oprah Winfrey episode, and she had a guy that was one of the most successful plumbers in the world. And basically the message was, I made millions of dollars being a plumber because I did what I was good at. For me, I grew up in the automotive field. After we got married, I thought, well, I want to be a nurse. And so I switched everything, and I started taking all these pre-nursing classes, and I failed horribly. And I went to the counselor at the university, and I said, gosh, I can't understand this. And she looks at my transcript. She's like, well, you're in the automotive. Why are you switching?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I just, nurses make good money. A nurse anesthetist makes even more.
Yeah.
And she said, I think you should go back to what you were good at, and not saying that people haven't been successful at doing something different like that, but I went back to what I was good at, and I stuck with it, persevered, and gosh, it's turned out awesome.
That's great. And it's just a passion too, right? It's a passion that sometimes you might stray away from for a little bit, but then it always sticks with you, and if you keep on going with it, you kind of start to see just how strong that passion is.
Yeah.
And I definitely understand that too. Before I really helmed myself into film, I almost became like a zookeeper, and I'm glad that didn't happen.
In film too, in film, there's two different types. There's the person that wants to create something cool. Everybody wants to create something cool. But the thing that, and of course I'm biased, this is my son, the thing that's always impressed me about him is he wants film. He wants something that he puts on the screen to change somebody's life, to bring a greater good, a greater power, whatever that feeling. And he's made 2 or 3 pieces that is absolutely just made me and other grown men just weep at the message that's portrayed. And it's all done through his visual talents of filmmaking. And
absolutely.
So, like I said, it goes back to what drives you, and your industry that you and my son share. You have to be passionate enough to go, okay, I'm going to go 3 months without income. And that would put me in the crazy house. I couldn't do it, but he perseveres and got through it. So
absolutely. That's awesome, man. That's a great message. And I think for the last message I'd like you to give, and this one might be more of a personal thing, but I think this message is super important because we spoke a lot about just the different ads that you have created with your son for these different companies, right? And I would assume that maybe some of these companies, of course, they might be like worldwide in certain cases, or some might be local. But when it comes to like local businesses, and you can remember for yourself when you first started off your business and you realized, okay, how do I want to spread the message of what we're doing? Of course, you went door to door, knocked on the houses, and maybe you had like personal like billboards or certain kinds of stuff that you put in news ads, but then there might have been a moment where you've actually created a commercial or something like that for your business. What message would you give, I guess, to those local business owners in terms when it comes to just marketing their business, and how important it is to start marketing through, we'll say video, because video is, of course, what is the industry I'm in. But how important is it for companies to have that? Because you understand, especially with your son that grew up into that, and you started to see as he got you involved into using a resource of your own. Basically, you guys fused resources and became really successful with it. What message would you give to people that maybe are hesitating on marketing just for their business overall?
Having multiple companies, the Sterling's Wild West is a separate company than my tire stores.
Mm-hmm.
And Sterling's Wild West gets a lot of marketing. He gets a lot of time and love, but the other ones don't. So I'm on both ends of that spectrum, and I can see where I'm neglecting. But just like my son said when we were shooting the Nokian tire commercial,
mm-hmm.
It's a tire. How many shots can you get of a tire? What, how can you make a tire look cool? How can you make auto repair look cool? Usually people, when they come in and they need tires in their car fixed, they're mad. They're mad to see you. They don't even want to see you. They don't even like you.
Yeah.
You got to turn this around and make it exciting. So I haven't figured out how to do that with the repair side, but I found out how to do it with the side where I guess most of my passion lies with the Raptor stuff. So
yeah, I that's funny that you say that. And it's I agree with that. I think there's the way to build that is just like, I think just storytelling, especially what a lot of these brands do. They if it's just about a tire, they'll somehow make it about something even bigger than a tire to make themselves seem bigger, or to make themselves seem to have a sort of just like energy or kindness or reliance based on their brand.
yeah.
There's many different things, but I think for what I think a good point in that is just like definitely just what you've done to build your brand up and to continue to build it up. You've invested so much into like your passion, getting Raptors. I mean, Raptors are never cheap, you know what I mean? And it's just like, it's incredible that you've been able to just, like I said, create such a name, a real name that sticks out within the Raptor community. And once again, I'm very happy that I had you on the podcast.
Awesome.
So thank you so much, Sterling, for just being able to take the time to come and sit with me on my podcast. Is there any sort of social medias that anyone can reach out to you on, your Instagram or YouTube, possibly? What social media?
Mostly Instagram. It's just Sterling's Wild West, and I look at direct messages all the time. So heck yeah.
Awesome.
Anybody can reach out. I get questions all the time about what kind of parts to put on my Raptor, what kind of lights, what kind of this and that. And I take time and answer all those questions. So heck, any question. I'm open. I'm up.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Sterling. And thank you to everyone else. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you as well. And thank you to everyone who's listening on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. We appreciate you. And we will see you guys on the very next podcast.